exist. And if that's the case, it sounds like you're not too inclined to live any longer. And I think that would be sad. I think your life still has meaning, even if God does not exist. So I would hope that you would get over that kind of thinking. But your statement, it's difficult to search for the truth or care about it, or if God does not exist, is very disturbing. That just does not fit with my experience at all. For example, I think that God probably does not exist. I won't say that he certainly does not. I'll say he probably does not. But every day is a search for truth for me. In fact, it's a very enjoyable activity. We're built as human beings to be curious. And we can look around ourselves at the stars above, the earth beneath our feet, the nature of life, how we create meaning, and so forth. And all these things are interesting in themselves. And I can't imagine ever stopping in the search for the truth. And yeah, I mean, that search will end when we die. We're going to be cut off from it, but that doesn't make it any less important right now. In fact, it might make it more important. We're given these few years of life on earth, around 85 years perhaps, to search for the truth, and that 85 years is really special. It's a time to look for the truth, and whether or not God exists does not take away from the value of that search.
Okay, I think, as I mentioned, I think that if we really go into this topic, it will take the entire session, and I will just briefly mention one, two things, and then I would like to really move to the other topic, and would like to come back to this topic in the future. What I mean that it's without God, there is absolutely no absolute meaning, no ultimate meaning for anything. No ultimate meaning. You can find a temporary meaning. You can justify your existence for temporary meaning. But if there's no ultimate meaning, I have difficulty to justify the activity that I would like to do in my life. In one way, I look at it and say, okay, if you give me one day and put me in a room and say, you know what, discover the truth in this room and write a book about it and, study everything here, but I will, at the end of the day, kill you and destroy everything that you will come up with, and no one will ever know anything about what you'll do, what happened in that room. The question for me, if you put me in a room and give me one day, and then tell me to actually work to discover something, and then say whatever you come up with at the end of the day will be completely destroyed and will be turned into nothingness, I will really have difficulty to justify my work. So that's why I think we can discuss this one in the future. But for now, I think we can perhaps stop here and move to the evidence for the existence of God and anything, because that's something that we need to, once we make some progress about the evidence for the existence of God, perhaps we can come back and visit again.
Well, I just can't give you the last word on that issue. You left things hanging quite a bit there. You said there is no ultimate meaning for existence if God does not exist. Well, you're closing the door on so many possibilities. Now, if God does not exist, it is also true that there's probably no afterlife for us humans. So if you want to say there's no, if you're implying that there's no ultimate meaning if we individuals die and don't go on, then you are closing doors on other possibilities. So for example, whatever we discover, invent, and share with other people will go on after we die. So we could do things in this life that are passed on to others. And so the meaning of our lives is not limited by our own death. It continues even after we die. And if others do the same thing, if they discover, invent, and share, then their lives are meaningful for those who come behind them. You kind of motion me to carry the reasoning out, and I'll do that. If life continues indefinitely into the future, then this process that I just described will go on indefinitely. And you are implying that it doesn't go on indefinitely. That's a separate hypothesis that has to be considered. But for you just to say, if God does not exist, then all other possibilities are ruled out, is not a rational type of conclusion. You would have to support that conclusion with evidence, and it'd have to be a conclusion beyond a reasonable doubt. In other words, are you suggesting that there is no way that life will continue indefinitely? Are you saying it definitely will end at some point in time? And are you closing the door on the indefinite existence of life? So you'd have to support that.
It's quite interesting. It's really interesting in the sense that to see that an atheist can believe in eternal life, because what you are describing is eternity, eternal life, and you know, even though this eternity is not for one person, but at least you believe the eternity might exist for living being, in a certain form. That's really interesting. I never thought that an atheist will believe in eternal life. And I think that what we should do, and what you should do, particularly as a humanist, that you need to really look at the evidence. And as you mentioned, the evidence now from your famous, well-accepted secular prophets, scientists, is that life of the universe is not infinite. And they might talk about the, look at any scientific study. There's no scientific study talks about the eternity of life. You might talk about the eternity of the existence as a material being to a certain level, but there's nothing, I haven't read anything that's talking about the eternity of life and living being. And indeed, there are ample evidence against that, like the very well-known theory of entropy in science that clearly indicate that there is a tendency, a movement toward in this case, the dismantling, toward disordering, and toward what they call the ultimate that's of the universe. So that's why, I mean, if you claim that there might be an eternal life for living being, and I think it will be burdened up on you to bring evidence, and those evidence should be, in this case, unequivocal evidence, strong evidence, and I have difficulty to see any evidence in science. And in fact, what I remember, Bertrand Russell, a famous mathematician, once said that when he thinks and about the future of mankind and understands that with certainty one day, based on the scientific knowledge, that the earth with everything in it will actually be thrown into the garbage of solar system with the collapse of the solar system, he said he will have really difficulty to comprehend the pain out of this loss. Now, my question is that you might say by then we might find a way to move to another planetary system, if there is any, at least so far we don't know yet.
Okay.